Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Jake Williams Show. I am your host, Jake Williams. Of course, episode 25. And back to just doing a solo show. I hope you guys really liked episode 24, my first foray into interviews on this show. I enjoyed the hell out of that episode. I think that was some of the most fun I've had recording a podcast, other than, the usual ones I do with co-hosts. It's great to reminisce about your childhood and realize how much of an idiot you are growing up. And if you haven't checked it out, it is the Trilogy Part 1. And we explain why it's called the Trilogy. We go all into that of episode 24. But don't worry, this episode's going to be just as cool, guys. I'm just as good when I'm by myself. I promise. I mean, I know I'm not Tommy Knapp or Luke Moyer, but I'm pretty good, I think. At least in my own mind. And, yes, of course, this is episode 25 of the Jake Williams Show. Before I go any further, I have to talk about the other shows on loudopinionated.com because I'm very proud of all the products that we put out on that website and on podcast services around the globe. I'm referring to Loud Sports. That is it's pretty self-explanatory, isn't it? A sports podcast that I do with Paul Rubidoux and Brandon Plecker. It's an interesting change of pace for me because I am not sitting in the host chair. I am simply a co-host. That is Paul's baby. That is his show, and I love doing work on that show. We got a lot of really cool episodes coming up for you that are going to really open your mind as a sports fan, I think. And it's all from the madcap brain of Paul Rubidoux. And as well as the other show, The Underachievers. That is a bi-weekly show that I do with Sparks, as you know him, and Chance Oliver. We talk about all that's going on in video games, what we're playing, what we're excited about, the news of that particular week. We put that up every other Thursday. We do that as well as write reviews on loudopinionated.com and post videos on YouTube. Underachievers Games is where those go. So yeah, there's a lot of great content on Loud and Opinionated. Not just me, but everybody else involved in it. There's also articles on the website, our little blog section. You click that tab, you get all the stuff we've done. I can't say enough about how much pride I have behind Loud and Opinionated. 2019 is all about expand the brand. It is true. And if you're listening to this when this goes up, Jake's Rad Movie Show will premiere next week. I'm not going to tell you the day. You got to just follow our social medias at Loud Opinionated on Twitter, Loud and Opinionated on Facebook, and Loud and Opinionated Brand on Instagram. Pay attention to those because that's when you will find out when the first episode of Jake's Rad Movie Show goes live. And maybe we'll even explain to you what the hell it really is. So yeah, enough promotion. Let us all sit back, relax, and enjoy a whole brand new episode of the Jake Williams Show. All right, so this week it's going to be interesting. I want to talk about something that the title might seem a little clickbaity, but it's not. I promise you that is not clickbait. I'm actually going to dive into what that title means. But this, right now in 2019, I feel like is one of the worst times to be a Star Wars fan. Let me preface this by saying it's not just about the content that's coming out for Star Wars. That's a part of it, but there's a whole other layer to it. Allow me to elaborate for you. Okay, first of all, what I mean by is the worst time to be a Star Wars fan, it's not because of the influx of content we're getting. We're getting Episode 9. We're getting the Mandalorian TV show. There's still video games coming out. We'll touch on those in a minute. And there's still a lot of new and fresh content. Marvel has, because Marvel's owned by Disney, The comic books are good. I've been reading the Darth Vader comic book. That's actually been really entertaining. There's a lot of good stuff. But the reason I'm saying it's the worst time to be a Star Wars fan is not particularly the content, it's the fans. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh my gosh, I'm getting out right out of the gate and throwing shade at Star Wars fans. I'm not. And I also want to say that this episode is not putting every single Star Wars fan in a box. Because the older I get, the more I realize Star Wars fandom is a very common part of life. And there's different walks of life that exist when it comes to Star Wars. Okay? So I'm not saying everybody is bad or the source of why I say it's the worst time to be a Star Wars fan. But they do play a part. Let's go back to 2017, way back then. December of 2017. We are at peak level hype for a Star Wars movie. We had Star Wars The Force Awakens. Very big success. A return to form, some would say. It started to, some people say too much hope, but it was a return to the original trilogy. And I think if you really dig into what makes Star Wars fans so jaded, it definitely starts with the prequels. And so now we have no George Lucas name on it. It is all Disney's creation now. $4 billion back in 2012 to own this franchise. So this is J.J. Abrams, who's done great work, made awesome TV shows, and actually made some really fun, enjoyable Star Wars movies, or Star Trek movies, with, Star Trek and Into Darkness. So we had a guy that we could believe in. Makes a great movie. Force Awakens is fantastic. I love that movie. Everybody is starting to feel, okay, we're heading in the right direction now. Star Wars is back where it needs to be. And then we get Rian Johnson's Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. And this is really where the chinks in the Star Wars power armor starts to show here. And it's, for whatever reason, The Last Jedi completely split the fandom right down the middle. And it really is it's also hilarious to me because just like almost anything else in our society now, there are two sides of Star Wars fandom. There's the camp that likes The Last Jedi, and there's the camp that don't. And sure, yes, you could say there's gray area. There's gray area in anything. There's probably people in the middle that enjoy Last Jedi, but understand why people don't like it, and vice versa. I totally understand. That happens with any movie. That happens with any topic. I totally get that. But for sake of argument, there's two sides of it. I'm in the camp that likes it. I remember when we first started the Loud and Opinionated, Derek was the side that didn't like it. And I started to realize maybe I'm in the minority that like it here. Which, again, is fine. I'm not saying you have to like what I like or vice versa. That's not at all what I'm saying. And that's not what I'm trying to get across. I just realized that this is really where, because for a long time, the fan base had been pretty united on how much they hated the prequels and loved the original trilogy. And, you could probably see different subgroups of who liked Clone Wars, who did, all the others, the games, all the other forms of media. But in the movie, the proper, movie franchise, it was unanimous on people that didn't like the prequels. And now we're finally seeing a difference of enjoyment. Now you're seeing people that liked Last Jedi, people that didn't, and it is very much a split. And it's really hard to talk about this without, and I'm not trying to upset anybody. I'm trying to particularly go after a certain group of people, and by go after I mean say, hey man, stop being jerks. We'll get to that. And this is something that I've realized in my many years of being a fan of a lot of different things. It's hard sometimes to accept the fact that just because you're a fan of something doesn't mean you have ownership of something. That doesn't mean that you can't be upset about something or disagree with something. But at the end of the day, I have no ownership of Star Wars. I have no claim to it. So if I'm upset about something and I don't like it, yes, I can be vocal. I can go on Twitter. That's my God-given right. First Amendment, Twitter is in there. I'm pretty sure. When our founding fathers mentioned, the right to freedom of speech, I'm sure that's exactly what they thought about. You can bitch on Twitter about Star Wars. And again, I want to reiterate that everybody was pretty unanimous with their enjoyment of The Force Awakens and Rogue One after that. I loved Rogue One. I thought it was great. I would argue that it was better than The Force Awakens. And I know I'm not in a minority here. A lot of people think that. And I think it's just because of the finality of it. The idea that it ends. I mean, granted, it's a patch between episode 3 and 4, and it connects movies, but it just ends. It's over. The reason why I think it's the worst time to be a Star Wars fan is because people are jerks. That's really what it boils down to. And I'm obviously talking about the instance where after The Last Jedi, the actress that plays Rose, Kelly Marie Tran, she quit Twitter because of all the negative backlash she got for her character Rose and how mean people were. And honestly, that is just what I hate so much about being in a fandom like that. And I'm not speaking in specific people, and I'm not saying all, and I preface this with that, but I think I need to reiterate that a lot to let people know. There's a particular group of people. It's not every person that didn't like The Last Jedi. It's not every person that liked it, but it's a specific. But that subset is getting louder and louder and louder, and it's getting worse and worse. And I don't necessarily want that to happen with this fandom, because Star Wars has always been about inclusivity and letting everybody in. That's the whole thing about the rebellion, is they take all comers to fight the Empire, and it's all about everybody being together and being involved. Even if you don't like The Last Jedi, even if you hate Solo, which I'm going to talk about soon, you can have differencing of opinion. But this is why I get so upset with this fandom. It seems so angry and so toxic about one movie that isn't even a bad movie. It'd be different. No, it wouldn't. These are still horrible things, and you should never do this, what happened to Kelly Marie Tran. It shouldn't happen. You should never do this. But it'd be different if this was a really bad movie. It would be different if this was Attack of the Clones level bad. It's not. Your issues with the story or how certain characters do things, whatever, that is nowhere near as bad as what the worst has been. And I think when you get spoiled with what J.J. Abrams did, you immediately just start thinking, this has got to be this. This has got to be this for me. And so when something different happens and a different approach to what you know in the Star Wars mythos happens, you get upset. And I'm sorry, man, they're not going to be the same as the original trilogy. I think that's what people can't wrap their head around. This isn't the same as Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. These are so many people are stuck in this weird bubble, this weird idea that every single Star Wars movie, because how badly we were burnt by those prequels, they have to be almost beat for beat like the original trilogy. I feel like that's a prime issue. There are a lot of people out there that think that's how it should be. And I want to reiterate, you don't own anything in this. You can be upset, but you don't own anything in this. So I think that's where you cross the line of ownership, where you start attacking actresses and actors that are involved in this movie that had no say in the writing, had no say in the direction. When you start crossing that line, that's where you think you own it. And you don't. Unless maybe you have stock in Disney. I don't know. But you don't. Not liking a movie is totally different than harassing someone that was in a movie that you didn't like. And that toxicity has just kept spreading and spreading. And I'll go into it now. I liked Solo. Yes, you can be upset that the prequels are, these prequel movies and these, like Rogue One, with Solo, we keep going back instead of going forward. That's fine to be upset about that. But I enjoyed Solo, and that movie has its flaws. But it was a fun summer movie popcorn flick. But now we can't have that in Star Wars anymore. Every Star Wars movie's got to be a fucking philosophical foray into your mind. I don't go to Star Wars for my philosophy, dude. I'm sorry. I know I'm probably I'm not a real fan because I don't particularly care about that. When oh man, Jake boiled it down to just space wizards. That's what it is. The Emperor literally shoots lightning out of his fingers. He's a space wizard, man. Let it go. Too many people take this stuff too seriously. It's fiction. We're supposed to be having fun. Why are you making it so hard to enjoy? I'm sorry that you didn't like The Last Jedi. I'm sorry, man. And I'm sorry you didn't like Solo. But when you, and this is who I'm talking to, this is where this got it at, and this is why I think it's the worst time, because these people are so fucking annoying, and they're everywhere on the internet. Where it's like, okay, so you enjoyed that movie, but this sucks, and I hate this. She's terrible. Let's go on her Twitter and attack her personally, and take some weird vendetta we have against Disney and Star Wars, and let's project it on someone else. Because it's easy to hide behind a keyboard when nobody knows who you are. Sorry, I'm swearing so much. This gets me worked up. And that's my point. These people are so loud and annoying, it ruins your fandom. It bothers you. Personally, I've turned that off, and I've learned to ignore them, but I had to just unleash it because, I don't know, this is something that I've been dealing with since The Last Jedi, because I was someone that liked it. I feel like it's some sort of weird cone of shame. Like I'm a dog, I have to wear this cone of shame that says, I like The Last Jedi on it. So that's what I mean when I say, and this is one of the factors into it, so that's what I mean when I say that this is the worst time to be a Star Wars fan, because you have an increasing level of douchebag fans that go out of their way to ruin it for everybody else. Go out of their way and just attack people that don't need to be attacked and just say horrible, terrible things. And I'm very aware that it's every fandom everywhere on the internet. This is fine. We make it this way. It's a call to arms to not just Star Wars fans, but all fans. If you don't like a movie, if you don't agree with a movie, that is totally fine. But the minute you step over that line and try to claim ownership and try to say this is yours and attack people on Twitter and personally have vendettas against people, you're done. You're out. Take your toys and go somewhere else. We don't want you. We don't care about you. Be better. That's my big takeaway from this. Be better. And I hate the idea that, everybody's preaching about that. Be better. Well, maybe we have to repeat it and say it a lot because people keep doing it and keep being bad and annoying. I get worked up about this because I care about Star Wars. I enjoy Star Wars. And I hate it when those people are so loud enough that it ruins it for everybody else that's having a good time. And there's fans out there that go to conventions and cosplay and enjoy it and love it. There's nothing wrong with those people. They're great. I'm never going to say there's anything wrong about being that big of a fan, going to these things, enjoying yourself, having a great time. There's nothing wrong with that. But the minute you go to Twitter, start being a Twitter tough guy, then I'm like, all right, let's pump the brakes here. Let's calm down. You're dressed up as a stormtrooper right now. Do you realize how silly and stupid you sound? Be better. So now that I've pissed off those people and kind of let it be known that I don't want them to be a part of this conversation, let's talk about the other reasons why it's the worst time to be a Star Wars fan. You know, something's happened, and this usually doesn't happen to me. Maybe I'm wrong here. I'm going to change this title. So if you've listened this long, thank you. I want you to know that I'm going to change the title of this episode because it's been worse. And I've mentioned it several times how bad it truly has been. But it's a turbulent time to be a Star Wars fan. I think that's the better phrasing. If we don't just look at what's happening with the movies, granted, people think it's different now because we got J.J. Abrams back. He can wrap up the trilogy, which I think, in all fairness, J.J. Abrams is a better choice than. I'm talking about Jurassic World. Hated that movie. No, I didn't hate it. Fallen Kingdom, I hated. Getting off topic. Back to what I'm circling back to. Let's take away the movie aspect of what's going on with Star Wars. TV, some interesting things are happening with Jon Favreau's The Mandalorian. That seems interesting, but I'm not going to pay for Disney Plus. Mostly because I've kind of gotten over it. I'm over streaming services, and I've made a whole episode on this show about how much I despise the idea of still making streaming services. After DC Universe, I'm kind of just, no, I'm not paying for more streaming services, more than what I already pay for with Netflix and Hulu and Amazon. I'm not going to pay for anything more. Amazon's different, though, because I actually use Prime shipping. The video just happens to be a part of the deal. But yes, as much as the Mandalorian seems interesting, I don't think I'm going to watch it just because I don't think I'm going to Disney Plus. But I'm more so talking about the video games. I believe it was last week, Disney CEO Bob Iger pretty much said he doesn't care that EA is being horribly incompetent handling the Star Wars license. Pretty much what he said is that, our focus is movies. We're better at movies. We've never been great at making video games, and their focus is movies. Which is fine, I guess. I mean, if you're a Star Wars fan that totally enjoys the movies, you're not going to worry about it. But someone that does partake in these Star Wars games when they're good, this bothers me. Because when you have such a big franchise of Star Wars, and I've spent the last 20 minutes talking about how important, this franchise has held in a regard for a particular group of people and how big of a deal it is, to just say, yeah, well, whatever, and totally be okay with the predatorial tactics of Battlefront 2 with how you couldn't play that game without making microtransactions. It was a pay-to-win service. Or really the fact that they keep canceling games and they can't figure out how to produce games, which should be really easy. It's Star Wars. Can someone explain to me how Star Wars 1313 didn't get made? You're printing money. You're playing as a bounty hunter. You're playing as Boba Fett collecting bounties in an open world. It writes itself. But it didn't work. And then, canceled games left and right from EA because apparently they don't understand that single player can work, especially in Star Wars. Everything has to be games of service. Everything has to be Destiny. And that's just not true. And that bothers me. And the fact that Disney doesn't really care. And I can understand why Bob Iger and Disney wouldn't care. Disney makes buckets and buckets of money with just the Marvel movies, let alone Star Wars movies. But at a certain point, I feel like they need to hold their video games at a higher standard. I think that it's been long overdue since the last time there was a really, really good Star Wars game. I mean, I'm talking like OG Xbox, like way of BioWare's games. That's as far back as I'm looking. And it's lore that is just so ripe for the picking, and I feel like very easy to get people behind and get people into. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. People cosplay, take this stuff seriously, go to conventions. Like, there's Star Wars celebrations, there's Star Wars weddings. Like, this is just everything about this Star Wars. It just seems so easy to me to find the right team to make a really good game. Ashley's in the house. She hit her funny bone. Distracted me. But this is a situation where, you know, maybe I'm the thing that I criticize. Maybe I'm trying to take ownership of this franchise. But I don't feel like I'm in a minority here. Majority of people want EA to just give up the license. Because they've shown that they don't, their heart's not in the right place. I think that's the crux of all this. I think Battlefront 2 has really showed people that there are a lot of talented people that are at EA, but they're forced to do things that maybe they don't want to do, and forced to be put in situations where, it's no surprise, EA is a shitty company. That's just what it is. I'm sure they're great to some employees, but the way that they treat consumers is, I'll never understand. So that does it for this week's episode of The Jake Williams Show. Just remember, don't be those guys that, you know, go on Twitter and attack people personally. If you're gonna bitch about a movie, but never ever take it out on the people that had no say in the changes that were made. They didn't have any say in the direction or the writing or whatever particular movie that you didn't like, any particular aspect of the movie that you didn't like. If you didn't like somebody's performance, do you really need to go on Twitter and personally attack them? No, you don't. Just keep it to yourself, man. Just be better. Don't be a dick. Pretty simple, right? I know it's hard for some people, but it's pretty simple. Follow Loud and Opinionated on Twitter, at Loud Opinionated. You can like us on Facebook, Loud and Opinionated. You can like us on Instagram, Loud and Opinionated Brand. And check out the other shows, Loud Sports, The Underachievers, all that other fun stuff on loudandopinionated.com and podcast services around the globe. And if you'd like to write for us, I would love to see it. I would love to see you join the Loud and Opinionated. I don't want to say, I hate when they say army. Because, you know, then it sounds like we're going to invade someone's computer. I don't want to sound like a virus. Now I'm just rambling on. Be loud at loudopinionated.com. Whatever you want to talk about, whatever you're opinionated about, you can send that there, and we will gladly publish that on the website. And most importantly, thank you so much for listening, and be loud and be proud.